Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, breaking down the game we love each and every day for you, the hardcore smart fan, with Joe Hunk talking Auburn and Oregon. We switch the page to Alabama's matchup against Duke. Considering especially, Joe, what happened to Alabama in the national championship game, I think all of us would love to see them match up against somebody that's worthy of the game. In the past, it's been, and Alabama, to its credit, neutral field. I will knock on the scheduling approach in the past, but it's always been lined up against a Wisconsin, a Florida State, a USC, a Michigan, somebody, Virginia Tech, that we thought, hey, this is going to be interesting. We'll see if they're worthy. Sure, Alabama's a big favorite, but still a top 10 to 15 type team.
Well, this is your if you've got $5, you can get into the stadium game. That's what you kind of want to call it, because if you don't know the history of the way that this game got scheduled, is normally the Chick-fil-A Bowl will reach out to both conferences, the SEC and ACC, and see who is interested. And instead, what they did is they reached out to the SEC and asked, hey, which of your teams would be interested in playing in the college football kickoff game? Obviously, Alabama raised their hand, and they said, hey, we would love to. Well, when they did that, then you saw the Chick-fil-A Bowl actually then reach out to the ACC and said, hey, we're looking for an opponent to play Alabama in the college, the kickoff game coming up in 2019. Duke's the only team that raised their hand. I mean, if you're Clemson, you're like, well, we're going to see them anyway at some point in time. We don't need to see them 2 times in a season. So, no, there's no reason for us to do it. Florida State had already agreed to play Alabama in the kickoff game, so they weren't going to be the team that accepted it. And quite frankly, Florida State hasn't been the same since. And so there was only a few options, and Duke raised their hand and they said, yep, we would absolutely love this stage. We would love to play Alabama in the kickoff game. This will give us a ton of exposure. And so that's the way that this game was even scheduled in the first hand. And no, it's not sexy. And the college football, kickoff committee and everybody around the College Football Hall of Fame, they've tried to make this game as sexy as it possibly can. But, even with the injuries that Alabama's seeing at the linebacker position, even the fact that they're going to be starting 2 freshmen at middle linebacker in Shane Lee and Christian Harris, those guys, you still have 2 as your quarterback. There's maybe some suspensions that aren't suspensions that may or may not be happening or something like that to your 2 starting running backs that nobody's worried about it. The line has maybe moved maybe a half a point to a point, and it's, instead of it being like 33.5 point favorites, they're now 32.5 point favorites. So nobody expects Duke to be good in this game. And honestly, if you're Alabama, with you being as injured as you are going into this game on the defensive side, it's good for you that you're starting off in a marquee game against an opponent that's really not that good, especially now that Daniel Jones is not the quarterback for Duke.
So, yeah, the Louisville game is the comparison from last year. Louisville went from being a Lamar Jackson, and even without Lamar Jackson, we knew what we typically got from Louisville. They're going to be a decent 8-4 kind of team, and then they just they crashed and burned last year, and they were one of the worst teams in the Power 5. Duke, though, should be better. They're not going to be that team that Louisville was last year, but I don't know that it matters in regards to a score, because I think Alabama won 51-14. They had like 35 points at half. They could have scored 80. It was on cruise control for more than half the game. They could have scored 80. So the score in this one should be pretty similar to what we saw last year, even though Duke's better. It's just not going to be very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not an Alabama fan by any means, but we do a college football fantasy football league on the Fallout, and I got the first pick of the draft, and I went with Tua. And everybody's like, why did you take Tua? Like, why on earth are you taking him? He only plays 3 quarters. Well, because in those 3 quarters, he also throws for about 4 touchdowns, and he also has about 300 yards passing. And fantasy football-wise, that's really good. So with this Alabama team, it's not about how many points they can score against Duke. We had a caller call in yesterday, and he said, Alabama's going to score 68 points against Duke. And I said, there is no chance that is happening. Not because Alabama can't, but because Nick Saban's not that kind of coach. And the moment he gets you in a comfortable lead, he's going to start getting the second and third string guys in, because he never knows. And especially with what has happened in fall camp for Alabama, with the injuries that have taken place, and especially the biggest one that happened with Dylan Moses the other day, you never know when some of these guys that are second, third string are actually going to be your starters. And so he wants to make sure that they're getting reps in live action games in big scenarios so that if Alabama's playing in this stadium coming up in December or January, well, December twice actually, because it's going to be December 28th, they are already used to playing on this field. They're already used to where the sight lines are, where the play clocks are, where the scoreboards are, everything like that, so that they know what to look for. And that's the way Nick Saban thinks. This is not about Duke. This is about Clemson. This is about Oklahoma. This is about Michigan or Ohio State. This is about Texas. This is about getting ready for an SEC championship against a Georgia or a Florida team coming up in December, and then potentially turning around and playing in the college football playoff in the Peach Bowl. That's what he's doing. That's the reason why he was so game for this. I guarantee you, Nick Saban, before he checked this game out, also went, oh, look at that right there. The college football playoff is also happening here. Why not play 3 games in this stadium this season instead of just 2 in one of the biggest recruiting grounds in the country?
Yeah, just do the math on these kind of matchups, just like the Clemson game. They had 21 at the end of the first quarter. Do the math, extrapolate it out. No, did they score 84 points? No, they scored 52. They let off the throttle. Chase Bryce was in the game and not Trevor Lawrence, et cetera, et cetera. And they filled in all sorts of different guys. Number 2, I think Nick Saban just has too much respect for David Cutcliffe, so he will do what he can to kind of ease it off and just let it be a comfortable big win of 52-10 or whatever it turns out to be. Big picture, Joe, is you mentioned the linebackers and who's lining up. And so no Dylan Moses. So if this is another spot on the football team, typically it's grab the next 5-star off the bench and we're good to go. But this guy is captain, inspirational leader, motivator, traffic cop at linebacker, gets guys set. He's just a different dude.
Oh, he's a monster. And we were talking about Derek Brown a second ago and how he could potentially be a top 5 draft pick. Dylan Moses is right there as well, because Dylan Moses is a monster inside that. The thing about it, the big loss, obviously, you look at from the physical side, and the fact that you have this 5-star future NFL starting linebacker from day one that is going to be not on your team for this entire football season. The other thing about this that some people don't realize is that the middle linebacker position is very much like the quarterback position over on the offensive side, where you come up and you have to read the offense and you have to start making adjustments throughout it. In fact, when I told you about John Parker Wilson talking with us the yesterday, him and we were talking about Dylan Moses' role and how it actually compares to the quarterback position and what he used to have to do as a quarterback. And he actually says the middle linebacker has more responsibility than what the quarterback and center do, because when the quarterback comes up to the line, they know the play. And unless they get a call from the other side, from their coaches to swap the play over, they're running the play. Whereas with Dylan Moses and what the middle linebacker is going to do, he can adjust everything on the fly if he gets the reads that he absolutely needs to. And there's more responsibility on that. That is where Shane Lee is going to play a big part in this, because according to Coach Saban, he's going to be the one that's going to be making these defensive adjustments. If he makes the wrong one, again, it's not about him making the wrong one against Duke. It's about him making the wrong one against Texas A&M or making the wrong call against a Georgia or something like that later on in the season. That's why this is such a big deal. And unfortunately, and it's bad to say, none of this is about Duke. This is all about getting ready for these bigger SEC games when Alabama's playing LSU or something like that later on in the year. That's where this is going to come in, and that's where Shane Lee's going to have to grow up really, really fast as the play caller on the defense.
Always enjoy the conversation with Joe Hunk from 740 The Fallout, his show from Montgomery, Alabama. Joe, we appreciate you stopping by, talking Auburn, talking Alabama. Hope to catch up with you soon. I know that it's not going to be an event of celebration, anything like that, but our thoughts and prayers are with everyone involved. I'm certainly going to go online and learn a little bit more about the situation. Not that it's going to help, but anybody who has are close to family, close to friends, just can't imagine what we discussed earlier. And if you don't know what we're talking about, check out the beginning of the Auburn, Oregon preview with Joe Hunk. We appreciate you stopping by, Joe.
Hey, thank you so much, man. I appreciate it.